All right, I want to mix things up a little bit over here in this episode and talk about how nose breathing while running has helped me kind of go from a 2K to almost an 8K in a matter of 1 month. So that's primarily the inspiration for this. But mostly all of the content that I've gathered from and implemented in my life is coming from this book called Breath by James Nestor. Amazing read, highly recommended. So I'm going to talk about nose breathing versus mouth breathing, and the whole book revolves around that. The lost art of breathing. That's the tagline of the book, in fact. So the effects on the brain of nasal breathing and mouth breathing, running with your mouth shut. Also, anulom vilom or alternate nostril breathing, and what happens in the body when you breathe from your left nostril and from your right nostril, and how sometimes when you wake up in the morning and you notice that one of your nostril is more blocked from the other one or more open from the other one, and in just 4 or 5 hours they switch places. So which is weird. I read it and then I kind of noticed and recalled, okay, yeah, that happens. So that was pretty interesting. Let's get into that. But let's start with why nose breathing? Well, it was given to us for a reason, but primarily when you breathe through your nose, it kind of cleans up that air. It humidifies it, which means it adds a bit of moisture and warmth to the inhaled air for smoother entry to the lungs, so that the lungs have to process less. And because the overall pathway from the nose to the lungs is longer, so it gets more time to kind of adapt to the body's temperature, which means again which is why the lungs have to process it lesser. So in mouth breathing it does not happen at all, so the lungs have to do much more to balance it out. The sinuses, when you inhale through your nose, release a huge boost of nitric oxide, which increases circulation and blood oxygen levels, which means better immune function, better moods, and weirdly better sexual functions. And to all the homies in the house, it's not just about the testosterone, it's also about the nitric oxide in the body. So you gotta nasal breathe for that organ to work. Also, nasal breathing is more associated with the rest and digest or the calm states, and mouth breathing is related more to the fight and flight states or the alert or stress response state. So you must have noticed that if there's something stressful going on, you'd have shallow breathing and you'll start to breathe through your mouth, and very small inhales and exhales would happen. I mean, you won't notice it in that situation, but it kind of is how the body behaves in a situation like that. So also I have extended very deeply on the rest and digest states and the fight and flight states in the previous episode of this podcast, so you can check it out. The name goes by like this: relaxed versus stressed. Yeah, so that's the spelling. Anyway, so these are just the benefits of nose breathing, but let's talk about the disadvantages of mouth breathing, which is how these nose breathing benefits will be more pronounced. So mouth breathers, and as James Nestor literally says, it's almost like you're pretty much crippled, and all the other organs in the body have to kind of compensate for this habit of yours. So mouth breathing is not good. One, they don't sleep well at all. Why? Because their mouths become dry in the night, which is why they would want to wake up and have water, and because they had water during the night, they would want to take a piss, which means you're waking up again and again, which means sleep slugged. So that's one reason. I think it's a good enough reason to change habits if you are a mouth breather, or just to observe and understand what's really happening with my body. So snoring, some people snore as well and are also mouth breathers. So snoring is literally an audio signal that the air is getting blocked on its way inside and outside. So that's a good kind of a precursor to understand that why you're not waking up fresh. And also, I mean, when your mouth is open, your tongue kind of falls behind. So if you close your mouth right now, you'd notice that your tongue is resting on the top part of your mouth. So if you close your mouth right now, you notice that your tongue is resting on the top part of your jaw. But when you open your mouth and you look up, to kind of mimic when you're sleeping, you would notice that your tongue falls behind in the back and it starts to block the airway, or the airway becomes smaller, which means the air is getting blocked on the way inside and outside. So some people have even this syndrome called sleep apnea, which is when your tongue almost blocks the whole windpipe. And some people, you might have even noticed that they're sleeping and then suddenly they take a very strong snore. That's because their tongue had stopped the flow, like 100%, and then now again they're waking up. Sometimes people wake in their sleep. That's because of sleep apnea. And again, when you're waking up in your sleep time and time again because you had a dry mouth, or because you want to take a piss, or you have sleep apnea, then that definitely means that your sleep is not of a good quality. And sleep is pretty damn important. So yeah, I mean, these are some of the disadvantages. One of them is, again, uh, when you are winding down your day, there's this hormone called sleep hormone, or melatonin, which is released. It puts you in that drowsy kind of a mood, like you want to wind down the day and sleep. So melatonin is the sleep hormone which is released, and then you fall asleep. And when you fall asleep, and when you enter those alpha stages of those sleep, start to enter the deep sleep stages, there's another hormone called vasopressin, which is released during the night, and it does nothing but it regulates the body fluids. So people who breathe through their nose during the night, you'd notice that most of the people who breathe through their nose, they do not need to wake up in the middle of the night to take a piss. Why? Because vasopressin regulated the bodily fluids and it helps with water retention, so that the body does not need to wake up during the deep sleep stages to take a piss. And obviously, again, your mouth won't be dry, so you won't be drinking water in the night, which means even less urge to take a piss. So yeah, so vasopressin again is pretty important. And for mouth breathers, the vasopressin, it does not work because most mouth breathers are kind of half asleep, and vasopressin does not get released because the body has not signaled it enough that, hey, this guy is in deep sleep. So this is one of the reasons why mouth breathing is bad for health and why nose breathing is amazing. Okay, now we know that you should breathe through your nose, and breathing through the mouth is almost crippled, not healthy. What you can do is you can consciously notice those times in the day when you are breathing through your mouth. You can replace them with breathing through your nose. That's one thing. Number two, you can do is you can do mouth taping. That's one technique that James Nestor talks about. He did it himself. He went from a 4-hour snore time to a 10 minutes snore time in just 7 days. So mouth taping, and it means exactly what it sounds like. You tape your mouth, but not in the weirdest way. Even though it's weird, tape your mouth. It's weird. But yeah. So what he says is take a stamp-sized micro tape and just apply it right in the middle of the lips. So how he says is the Charlie Chaplin mustache, just that, but down below on your lips. So even if you want to like sneeze in the night or cough in the night, you have this area around your mouth that you can do, so that you can do that. So it's not too intense. I mean, you'd have trouble sleeping if you're a mouth breather, intense mouth breather, and you've taped your mouth. You definitely have problems with that. So starting it slow. So that's another technique. Number third is more of a lifestyle thing, I think. It's called chewing better. So basically, we've been told to chew every bite 32 times, and we don't. We never. Part of the reasons is when you start to chew anything for 32 times, the saliva and the food mix up. It does not taste well when you gulp it in. So that's my reason for not chewing food 32 times or well enough is this. But I tried it and I am not going back. because of two things. One, it definitely helps the jaw muscles to kind of strengthen. And number two is it helps with digestion. So my liver literally thanked me that thank you so much for processing the food up above and not throwing a mountain on me. So, I mean, it definitely helps with digestion. You'd notice that in your bowel movements, that when you chew your food for longer, you'd have a better cycle of bowels and everything. So the reason behind the chewing helping with you breathing through your nose is that we now have highly processed foods. So it does not need to be chewed that long for it to be gulped in. So what happened 400 years ago was there was no farming, which is why the food that we ate then, or the chewing time back then, was about 4 hours, 3.5 to 4 hours. And now it has reduced to just 10 minutes, 10 minutes a day. I mean, like if I have food 3 times and I eat one meal in 10 minutes, so like 25 minutes, that's what we're seeing. That's a radical decrease in the chewing time, which means the muscles around the jaw won't be strong enough, which means when you sleep, the jaw muscles, because they're not strong enough, they would relax, which means you will open your mouth to sleep. This simple basic dynamics. So chewing better, again, amazing for digestion, can help a mouth breather to become a nose breather. Now let's get into the wisdom of the body and how the nose knows better. You might have noticed that when you wake up, one of your nostrils is more blocked than the other one. And in just 4 or 5 hours during the day, those nostrils will switch places. So it happens with me a lot. I'll wake up, one of my nostrils is blocked, and by half day, it will switch places. So what's happening over here is that the left and the right nostrils have different functions inside of your body. The left nostril is more related to the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest state, and the right nostril is related to the fight and flight states or the sympathetic nervous system. So when you wake up with one of your nostrils blocked, the nose kind of is compensating the air in such a way that your body gets into a stable or balanced state. So it's pretty wise for an organ like nose to do this thing. And I noticed it myself just a month ago. I was having a slight fever, and I thought I will do what my body says. So one of my nose was blocked, but I did not focus on mouth breathing. So I'll give this opportunity to the nose, and I'll let it take it from there. So I did that because I read this book. I kind of noticed it, and I gave it the opportunity. So I did that, did not eat anything, and I think, or I believe, that the fever went in way less time than it would have gone to. So, and in that book, James Nestor really talks about how wise the nose is when it comes to kind of balancing the body states, the temperature of the body, and the response to whatever situation you're in. So the nose really knows better. With that being said, I would say switching from a mouth breathing lifestyle to a nose breathing lifestyle is a very lifestyleish change. So it's gonna take some time. There's no switch, but knowing this consciously, that what kind of a breather you are and what benefits you can have when you switch from a mouth breather to a nose breather. Or even if you're a nose breather, you just feel good. I am a nose breather myself. I don't breathe through my mouth, but me reading this book really helped me understand all these things about myself. So I feel good about it. Anyway, so I started running, and I went from a 2K to an 8K, and I don't do laps at all. I don't stop during my jogging or running. Even though at a slow pace, I don't ever stop. So I started with the 2K. I sticked to nose breathing, even though I did not want to. I wanted to open my mouth. But eventually, slowly and gradually, I went from a 2K to a 4K, and then a 5K, and then a 7K, and then an 8K, and now I'm nose breathing. And I think the stamina and or my body's capability to use oxygen wisely has been affected by nose breathing. I think that had I been a mouth breather at maybe a 3K, after 3 kilometers, I would start to breathe through mouth. I wouldn't have gone that far, almost to an 8K. So I think nose breathing helped me. And even James Nestor talks about it, that when you breathe through your nose, the body's ability to absorb oxygen increases. So, yeah, that's one of the things. Anyway, that's it for this episode, all about breathing and running. And again, I would highly recommend this book if you're interested, Breath by James Nestor. All right. Talk to you soon, guys. Thank you so much for listening.